Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's Expert Talk Online, especially to those of you joining us from Australia and New Zealand. I'm Caitlin Smith. I'm a delivery lead at Equal Experts, and I'm currently working with HMRC. Today, we welcome Andy Leatherby, as you can see, and my colleague Scott Cutts. They're going to share their exciting journey of transforming from a data storage team into a data product team at HMRC. Andy has been working with HMRC for over 32 years. He started out as a criminal investigator with a focus on serious organized crime conducted by globally significant criminal groups. He has investigated a diverse range of activities, including drugs, money laundering, firearms, tax fraud, child protection, and banana smuggling. Maybe at the end, Andy can tell us a bit about banana smuggling. He has been a digital forensics and cybercrime investigator and expert witness for over 20 years, providing expert testimonials in over 250 serious criminal conspiracy cases and well over 1,100 civil cases with a value totaling over 3.9 billion. He's also an independent technical assessor for the UK Accreditation Service, reviewing forensic labs. He is the service owner, the digital service owner and business lead at HMRC for the Customer Insight platform, leading teams delivering platform capabilities for behavioral analysis and insights for customer interactions with HMRC. This is really about helping HMRC to understand what customers are doing for a range of business use cases. We'd also like to welcome Scott Cutts. Scott is an engineer with Equal Experts with over 6 years experience with Equal Experts, but has over 15 years experience in total. For quite a bit of that, he worked down under as well, and then he moved over to the UK. He accidentally discovered data engineering several years ago and found it surprisingly enjoyable and not just a buzzword. He has been earnestly learning about munging data, applying machine learning, and spinning up pipelines ever since, with a focus on big data and real-time data. Scott is currently the data architect on the Customer Insight platform at HMRC, and he's also an active member at EE's data community. So I'm going to hand over to Andy shortly. So Andy's going to tell us about HMRC's journey from going from a data storage team to a data product team. You can start adding questions using the Q&A function. Please try to avoid using the chat because we won't be using that at the end. We'll be answering the top voted questions at the end of the talk. So keep an eye on those questions and you can vote by selecting them there as well. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Andy and Scott. Would you guys like to present? If you need any help, just let me know. There we go.
Hopefully that's up now.
Fantastic, excellent. That's great. Thanks, Andy.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. And thanks very much for joining this morning. Thanks for the introduction, Kate. Yeah, so the joys of HMRC. Oh, hello. That's interesting. There we go. It's responding now. Wonderful technology. Yeah, so the talk this morning is about our HMRC's journey from just looking at data storage and how we sort of iterated that and started understanding about data as a product in its own right. Just a little bit of background about HMRC and why we got to where we got to. HMRC, as hopefully most people know, but we are the UK tax authority. We are a very significant organisation in the UK. We collect approximately £560 billion worth of revenue every year. In a normal year, obviously this year's been a bit different. We also make payments and repayments as well. So we have various tax schemes which allow for repayments as well. And as a result, we are a massive fraud target for criminals. Not just individuals, but organised crime, significant international organised crime. The top 4 malware writing groups in the world specifically target HMRC customers because of the value of our repayments and the cash out values, which are 10 times as big as the average cash out values for things like credit cards and debit cards. We're also one of the most abused brands online. We have a very strong international brand. And as a result of that, it's a good way for criminals to target victims online, not just to compromise HMRC accounts, but also other online banking and things like that, traditional phishing attacks. We knew as HMRC that we would be a target. We didn't realise quite how big, and as things evolved, we identified that we needed to really start innovating and understanding identity fraud, understand what was going on in our online environments, and protect our customers, their identity data, and the organisation itself. Government organisations have a bit of a higher responsibility than people like banks. If you don't like the way your bank's treating you, you can swap. If you don't like the way your government body is treating you, you don't get a choice. You have to use us if you want to engage with government in a particular jurisdiction. So we needed to make sure that we had ways that were simpler for a customer to complete their obligations, create an accurate environment that allowed us to collect good information from our customers, helping customers get their obligations right first time. That's ultimately the aim, make it as simple as possible for a customer. But at the same time, we had to ensure that we were making the environment as resilient as possible to protect our customers and protect the revenue. We pay out billions every month in repayments, so this is a big deal for us. So how did we approach it? So we realised that we needed to build out a much more significant environment. We started out with common off-the-shelf banking products. We tried those for a while. They're quite expensive. They're quite difficult to tailor to specific business needs, and inevitably they became difficult to operate with. We knew that we needed scalability. Like lots of organisations, our businesses peak and trough. Sometimes our business peaks much more than other organisations. The last year is a really good example where we've seen orders of magnitude increase in the volumes. So we knew we needed to do cloud development. We needed to develop our own capability. So we decided that we would build out our own capability. We knew that we didn't know who the next victim was going to be, or where the next attack was going to come from. So we decided at a really early stage to start capturing 100% of data for several years so that we could see a broad spectrum of normal behavioural activity. We weren't really using it at that stage, but we knew that we needed it so that we could go back and look once we identified there was a problem. And actually that decision has paid massive dividends over time, which I'll come on to. We started then to, as we collected all of that data, start to realise the real value of the data in its own right, the data as a commodity. And we started to understand that it wasn't just about the things we wanted to look at and we were targeting, it was also about the other things we hadn't even thought of yet. If you think about the context of a standard customer in the context of fraud, you don't know if a standard customer is going to be attacked by fraud from an online criminal group at any given time. So in order to establish a normal pattern of behaviour for a customer, you have to treat all customers as if they would be a victim of crime. And that sort of leads to that 100% collection thought. So when you start thinking about that and you start understanding the spectrum of activity that's going on there, so from a normal customer thinking about their doing their activity on your platform, that normal customer may need some help. Understanding the data and around their activity can allow you to support them in more innovative ways. And equally, at the other end of that spectrum, if it's a customer who's actually a criminal, you can use that same information to understand that criminal behaviour, both to protect the customer and to identify the criminal patterns. So we started thinking about data and how it actually works. If you think about data storage, everyone has some form of auditing. That's data storage. It's flat. Typically, organisations take it, collect it, put it in a bucket, leave it alone, and only refer to it if there's an incident. That's data storage. Now, data as a product is when you start looking at that data and actually developing value from it. So for instance, in HMRC, one of the pieces of single value we've developed from our data is creating timelines for every single customer, because that allows us to look at that behavioural pattern. Sorry, don't know why this is being slow to respond today. I'm hoping to. Okay, there we go. There we go. Sorry, the presentation for some reason is running slow, but that's fine. Okay, so what did we understand? So when we looked at COTS products, we ran them for a couple of years, and what we found was that they were too slow to operate. The response times on some queries were taking over 24 hours to locate records. They weren't scalable to the sort of volume we need as an organisation. And if they were scalable, the cost of doing that scaling was prohibitive. There were also, because there were constraints around the infrastructure, which wasn't elastic, it was slow to perform those inquiries. So it wasn't scaled to the size we needed for the business. And it didn't allow us to iterate in the ways we needed to. As customer behavior changes, as we identify new things, we needed to be able to change our data product quickly. And COTS products didn't give us that flexibility. So that's why we chose to build rather than buy. And actually, we did quite a lot of survey work around a lot of other organisations with the help of some of our partners in government. And this was a broad conclusion that actually, if you want to get really into this space, building, although it costs a bit more initially, in the long run is much cheaper because it gives you that flexibility you need. So what were the principles? So the key principles for us were cloud first. We were moving as government in the UK to moving to cloud-based environments. We realised, particularly with our business, that having that flexibility, that scalability was incredibly valuable to us. So we went cloud first, and that flexibility is really important, really valuable to have. Last year is a prime example of why that flexibility has been incredibly valuable. We've seen enormous increase in our customer base and traffic levels. At one point, we were seeing 45,000 logins per second on our platform, and another 75,000 customers waiting in lobbies. We've seen exponential growth in our data storage, and that flexibility around cloud is what's allowed us to cope with those peaks and allowed us to sustain service for our customers. Collecting 100% of the data across the channels, not just digital channels, but actually recognizing that customers interact across multiple different channels simultaneously. So being able to gather that data together in one place is really valuable to us. Also important to recognize that when you're doing that, if at all possible, valuable to stream that data in. If you assume from day one that your use case is as near to real time as possible, further down the line, it gives you a lot of benefits. Think of a call center where a customer calls in because they're dropping out right now in a digital journey. If you've got that really low latency in the streaming your data into your environment, at the very least, you're able to see what that activity was and why the customer's having difficulty. It provides you immense power. Link channels, share information. When you're bringing data together, try it, even if it's at a very high level, try and link that data together across your customer identifiers so that you can start to build this timeline of activity. Timeline of activity is something that you can then iterate. If you build the baseline model and say, here's a customer, they're my entity, you can start to build out attributes against that entity, you know, this, where they live, what their contact details are, all of those sort of KYC things. But you can also get into much more advanced features like what are their normal devices, what's their normal geolocation for activity. And these start to give you additional insights into how your customers behave and what they're doing, allowing you not just to identify fraud, but also to identify lots of other valuable business information. The other thing to remember is that unlike a lot of data collection activities and data storage activities, this isn't just about getting the audit data from the service. This is about getting the content, the post data from the customer, what they actually told us, because that allows you to join up all of that activity together really simply. So in HMRC, so we've had some fairly big stuff. We've brought in about 300 terabytes so far. That covers our customer base and all of significant volumes of their activity. It's about 99.9% of their digital activity for the last 7 years. And then as we've progressively added channels into that data, that's increased. January this year, 9.6 billion transactions. So January is traditionally quite a busy month for us anyway, because of the UK self-assessment tax filing period. Typically, we're bringing in about 450 million transactions a day. And at the moment, we audit across about 800 HMRC services, and that's across multiple channels. So we audit in Government Gateway, our digital platforms, our API platforms, our telephony platforms, and we bring that data all together into one place. What's really cool is the impact it's had on our own users, our business users who use this data. It's given them and empowered them to access customer information incredibly quickly, to be able to access what a customer's actually been doing. It's relieved enormous amounts of frustration, and it's meant that they can actually self-serve for their own business needs. So we open this up. It's also enabled us to move quite flexibly into the wonderful world of artificial intelligence and machine learning. Lots of organizations are starting to get into this field, and one of the biggest challenges they face initially is actually sourcing the data, getting it together into environments where they can readily access it to apply models and understand what value they have in their data. So it turns out, and I'd love to say this was by design, but it wasn't. It was sheer luck. By sheer luck, because we brought 100% of data in and we put it all in the same environment, we've been able to skip that messy, awkward stage where you try and bring all of that data together and bounce quite nicely into starting to develop some really interesting machine learning models that allow us to identify all sorts of different behaviors. It's also helped us to build stronger relationships with our own internal customers. And that's about building trust. That's about being able to have a stable, flexible platform that meets their needs, where we can actually respond agilely to their user needs and iterate the service flexibly to deliver the things they need. We started this journey so we started in 2010, and we've actually So that in the first iteration lasted about 4 years, and that was with the COTS product. We moved that over into cloud-based environments in 2014, and we've been running as a continuous agile project since then. And it's one of those areas where we don't expect that it's going to be just built, done, and handed over to a live service team and then minorly iterated. It's going to be continually evolving because we know that things are going to change over time. So what's the big lessons learned for us? Data accessibility. Bring all of your data as much as possible into one place. Try and standardize into open formats rather than proprietary ones. This ensures that you can couple and decouple from a range of different tooling quite easily. And as I said before, bringing it into one place has actually delivered some dividends. Wherever possible, stream the data in. Bring it in as quickly as you can. Try and join it as quickly as you can, because the real value for a lot of that data is now. It's, can I help my customer now? And that might be in a support channel, that might be in a fraud context, or anything in between. You know, those are two ends of a scale. Think about your tooling. Bear in mind that not all of your teams will be using the same tooling. So try to be as flexible as possible in allowing teams to access the data in the tooling they need to deliver the thing they need to do. That's what delivers the value. So the responsibility on the platform is, as much as possible, try and unify and join that information together so it's usable, and map that data. The responsibility of the teams is then to exploit that data as a product in its own right. Make sure you're scalable. No one knows what's around the corner. Your business could take off. Your business could go into a lull. All of these things are within the realms of normal behaviour, let alone in the context of what's going on around the world at the moment. Having that flexibility means you can scale your platform to the right size, whether that's big or small at any given moment. And that gives you delivers you efficiencies in your platform. Bring together 100% of data if you possibly can. This is really important. And if you take one thing away, bring your data together, it unlocks lots of value. Think about data quality. Your data is only as good as the quality of the input. So in HMRC, we decided to do things like build automated reputation services. We actually validate data and get it as clean as we possibly can with the customer while they're in the journey. Lots of organisations have similar approaches using a range of different things, but whatever you do, invest that time in ensuring the quality of that data, but also with your local teams who are collecting that data on, with their own products. Make sure that that data is well mapped by those teams. Get them to build your data dictionaries so that analysts coming along later, or data scientists coming along later, have got that map of all of your data within data dictionaries. Make it a living thing, not like traditional data dictionaries. Give the ownership of that to the operational team. So give the ownership of pipelines and data to the teams who actually own the services as much as possible, because they're the ones who are going to care if there are problems with it. They're the ones who are going to make sure that the data quality remains as high as possible. Key lessons for us. Choose strong, innovative delivery partners. In HMRC, we, amongst others, we've chosen EE. As HMRC, let's be really clear, as a government organisation, we can't endorse any supplier individually, but what we can say is it's really important to make sure that you choose the right supplier, a supplier who's going to support not just the technical capability, but your organizational ethos. If your supplier isn't aligned to your ethos, they're not going to fit very well. And that's really important. Recognize that cloud first is the future. If you haven't made the leap, do it. And recognize that not all cloud providers are the same. So for HMRC, we found through a number of iterations that hyperscale cloud providers provide us with the high volume scale of flexibility that we need as a business. Smaller cloud providers struggle to meet our demand. Your organization may be different, but having that flexibility and choosing the right provider is really important to you. Try and avoid that vendor lock-in as well. And initiate data collection of as much data as possible as soon as you can. Data is an incredible value tool nowadays in its own right. It's not just about auditing. So that's it from me. What I'll do is I'll stop sharing my screen and we can have a whiz through some of the questions.
That's great. Thanks, Andy. That was a really insightful talk. So yes, we're going to go on to the Q&A. So as people might have noticed, questions are being put into the Q&A function. I'm going to take the questions based on the voting, so the highest one, and we'll work our way through these. So the first question, Andy, that we have for you is from Chitan. It said, since data is in one place, does that not increase security risks? How did you manage that aspect?
Yeah, sure. So you can segment data, and I would strongly recommend that you do. It allows you to structure your data in useful ways based on channels or products. There is a different security risk, but data aggregation in itself is not nowadays the security risk it was. Nowadays, if your data set is compromised by and it's small, the impact on your business can be just as harmful as if that data storage is large. But you can take measures to segment that, and there's lots of information out there from people like National Cybersecurity around how you can manage your data storage in ways that allow you to segment it and secure it effectively. So yes, it does change the risk, but that risk is manageable as long as you bring in the right structures to secure your data.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks, Andy. Next question we have from Thomas. Do you think a criminal is watching this presentation?
They may well do, and that's fine. We don't make any secret about what we do. So HMRC is an organisation. In the UK, we have general data protection regulations, like lots of other countries, where we provide citizens with rights around their data and how it's used. HMRC is a statutory organisation, so we have a public function, which is the administration of tax. So our customers don't actually have the same levels of choice as if you were to go to a marketing website. For that reason, instead of giving customers the choice, what we do is publish fair processing notices on our website that talk about how we collect your data, what we do with your data, and how we use it. If a criminal is watching, that's fine. There's no secret in what we do. We're just like every major bank, financial institution, lots of the online marketplace platforms. We care about our customers, and we actively look at what users are doing on our platforms to protect our customers.
Okay, that kind of nicely leads into the next question. Do your customers have a right to control what personal data you're collecting? Can customers ask you to remove their personal data that you keep in the system, like their IP addresses, security tags, port numbers, and other information that you're collecting from all the digital service users? Are you GDPR compliant?
Right, so last question first. Absolutely, we are GDPR compliant, and we continually engage with the information commissioners to assure that we are, because we recognise that we're in a very privileged position. Do our customers have a choice? Unfortunately, no. I mean, if you think about taglines for businesses, the tagline for HMRC would be HMRC because you have to. Tax is an obligation. It's a statutory obligation, and there are penalties if you don't comply with that within legislation. When customers interact with us, every activity that takes place forms part of their tax record. And under tax legislation in the UK, we are permitted to retain that data for 6 years plus the current year. And that's a rolling retention. Some data we hold for longer than that. Can customers have that data removed? Well, put simply, no, because it forms part of the tax record. It's not a choice, it's a statutory obligation. And that's why we're kind of different from other businesses. And obviously your business may has obligations, almost certainly. There are not many that are government organisations. And as an external organisation, you do have to seek consent. You are subject to a number of the data access rules. In HMRC, customers are able to access their data under certain conditions, and all of those conditions are available on our website. And certainly, we are subject to some subject access requests where customers can see the information we have. And in fact, in a lot of cases, we do share that information with them anyway, particularly on things like if a customer's appealed against a particular penalty, we may share the records we hold to support our assertion that a penalty is required.
Thanks, Andy. The next question is from Paul. How long has the journey taken you in total? How long did it take to start generating some value for HMRC?
Yeah, sure. So as I say, we started out in 2010 doing stuff. By 2014, we had, well, by 2011, 2012, by about 2011, we started generating value from the COTS products. So we already, as an organisation, had a foot in this door. As a data product, we really started into that side of the journey from about 2014, where we started moving into cloud-based environments and had a much more comprehensive collection pattern. From there, we started understanding the value of the data we had probably within 12 months, and generating value from that was pretty much immediate. Initially, that was focused against the fraud mission and detecting suspicious activity, suspicious accesses to customer accounts. But actually, it was that at that kind of same time as we started really diving into the 100% of data, that allowed us to start realizing the benefit of the stuff we hadn't exploited.
Okay, perfect. We have the next question, which is a really good question. We've got David. He says, Andy, could you share any times your background as a criminal investigator hunting down organized crime has helped deliver positive outcomes for HMRC?
Can I share? Well, so that's a good one. Can I share? Well, so let's talk about positive outcomes in the platform. A really good example. So at the start of COVID, HMRC were tasked with making available COVID support services. Because of how we approach our data collection and how we approach our platform, we knew that we need to support that, but we also knew that it would be a target for fraud. So using my experience around how fraud is developed as a pattern, we kind of built a load of new products and services within the team at an enormous pace, just to plug some of those gaps and at least allow us to get back. In terms of value, what that's allowed us to do is deliver really cutting edge, and they are genuinely cutting edge services that look at patterns of behavior, have allowed us to identify some really truly horrible people who are exploiting support services that are desperately needed by UK citizens and businesses. And it's been allowed us to take that data, provide it out to operational teams, and actually to intervene incredibly quickly at going out arresting those people. There's been a number of headlines in the UK over the pandemic where HMRC has gone out and arrested people who are deliberately targeting and exploiting these critical support teams. So it's kind of bringing those skills together for me. Is, as a criminal investigator, I've always got that eye. It's in my bones. I've always got that eye on where's the next fraud coming from, and how do we in the platform identify that? If I was looking for it as an investigator, how would I identify it? And that kind of colours a lot of the judgments we make around how we bring our data together. But it turns out that's actually valuable right across the use case, from customer support all the way through. Those same principles apply. And that's kind of one of the messages from me is, it's not just about criminal, it's about well-behaving customers too. Having the same patterns, the same principles allows us to join that, provide a timeline of a customer, which can then be used to support them or to identify a bad behavior, those two ends of a spectrum.
Thanks, Andy. Oh, we've got quite a few questions coming in. We've got the next question is from Julia. Retrospectively, what key factors made the evolution to a data analysis platform easier, or would have made it easier?
What would have made it easier? Hindsight about tools and tooling. Choosing the right tools and choosing open, flexible tools. So as in HMRC, we've kind of gone from a fully bound off-the-shelf product to a more flexible third-party licensed product, but still constrained within that. And we're iterating the platform now into a much more open data format with much more flexible tooling over it. And that's kind of one of those lessons that I mentioned, which was, try to make your data agnostic. Try to make your data open format, not proprietary, because it's the data that's the value. It then allows you to swap in and out those tools. And as I say, for me, the big learns are bring your data together, care about the quality of it, care about your tooling, and make your data as open as possible in terms of format and structure, so that you can readily swap in and swap out as your business learns about your need and your business need. Because what you think about at the start is not what you actually need in the end. It does change.
Great. So the next question is from Carmen. Was there ever a compliance problem on retaining data in the cloud instead of on premises, being HMRC data?
Yes, it's a simple answer to that, particularly when we started out. Because there was, when we started out moving data into the cloud in 2014, there was a lot of nervousness. It hadn't been done much in government. There was lots of nervousness around how we did it, and rightly so. This is everyone's. It's my data as well, literally my data as well. I'm a taxpayer, so we had to think about that in a lot of detail. That's really understandable, and that reticence to move to the cloud is kind of it's still there. It's an underlying an undertone. I guess for me, the way to think about it is cloud is just someone else's server, just the same as the data center is just someone else's server. Now, if you've got your servers on premises in your building run by your people, then fine. Your risk posture is very different from ours. But most organizations outsource their IT. So you're already got someone else's IT. So whether that server is in so the whole idea of cloud is not that it's not that you're doing away with those servers. It's just another organization with another server, but they're provisioning it in a more flexible way. So the things you actually need to think about is, well, what zones, what jurisdictions do I want to operate in, and can my cloud provider assure that my data only operates in those environments? Can I tolerate flexible data sovereignty, or do I need confined data sovereignty? So it's things like that that actually become more important than, oh, it's cloud, it's scary.
Great. This question might be a good one for Scott as well to chip in. We've got, what have been the biggest obstacles in getting models into production?
Sure. Yeah, so I guess machine learning of us, it's like Andy said, the data has never really been the issue so much. I guess with most machine learning, it's getting feedback has been hard for us in general. Most people don't commit fraud, so the fraud labels used for machine learning are by far the minority. So that's a challenge for us. And I guess it's probably something that's common to most organizations, in that it's taking the users on the journey with machine learning that has probably been an obstacle for us. Like making sure they understand that the score, like if you're giving them a score or something similar, making sure that the users who are going to do the investigation on that score understand that score and can go on that journey with you and understand the data you're giving them and how to work with it. I'd say that's been the biggest obstacles, and it's still something we're learning. I think it's fair to say, Andy, isn't it? How to do that best. But yeah, we've been quite lucky in that actually getting the models themselves out hasn't been that difficult. It's more been the stuff around the edges.
Okay, thanks for that. Next question. Why did you decide to become a platform, and was it necessary? And did you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. And it's kind of that flex between, are we just a tool that does a thing, or are we providing multiple services? So it was actually our customers who drove us to be a platform, not us. So we started out thinking, we're a product, we do a thing, and that's fine. But as we started to understand the utility of the data, that's when we started to realize that our customers didn't just need the thing we built, they needed the flexibility to access our services and information in ways we hadn't understood before. So if you think about the context of management information or business information, understanding user journeys, sentiment analysis, journey analysis, actually those users don't want us to pre-package that. What they want to be able to do is access our data as a product, all of that lovely rich joined data, and then start doing analysis on that in flexible ways. And that's where our responsibility becomes, not as a service, but as a platform, to make sure that that data is there, it's curated, it's structured, and it's accessible. So it's kind of that's that iteration, and that's what drove us. It wasn't about us going, hey, let's just be a platform. It's about the customers defining what they need, and then you providing it.
Great. Okay, so the next question is from Paul. Is this only used for fraud-related insights or more general customer insight analysis?
No. So we use it. And that's where the value really comes. This is that's the whole purpose and the whole thing about data as a product in its own right. Because we started out from a fraud perspective saying, look, we need to make sure we've got data for everyone in case they become a victim. Actually, what that meant is we had data for everyone, and most of them weren't victims. Most of them weren't criminals. So what do we do with that data? Well, that data, that establishing that timeline, that pattern, then means that in sentiment analysis, in service analysis, we can say, we can see what a group of customers, or a service level, however we want to segment it, we can see what the behavior in that channel is with regular customers. So it's used at that end to support customers and to provide services to them. We also use it for resolving questions and queries. So if customers had difficulty, and gives us feedback on that, we'll engage with them, and we'll actually walk through the journey with them. Our monitoring is then available to actually see exactly what they did and understand what their problems with the journey was. So the middle ground is where we have that contention between a customer and ourselves in kind of our compliance space, where a customer says, "But I did a thing." We say, "Yeah, but you didn't." And where that contention lies, we use that data in the middle ground to openly discuss with the customer what they did and whether it's appropriate to apply a penalty, or whether actually the customer's right and we need to be supporting them all. And then on the far end of the scale, the other way, yes, we use it in criminal prosecutions. So yes, it's used across the spectrum right now, and that usage is increasing day on day. Specifically, again, let's go back to the pandemic. Our data, our BI data, and management information was being used on an hourly basis through the early stages of the pandemic to brief HMRC senior leaders and government. So central government, the Chancellor, the Cabinet Office, the Treasury, so that everyone knew what was going on.
Okay, that's great. So we've got a question from Caleb. What's next?
Sorry. Phone going off. What's next? What's next is more data, more products. So we are expanding our capability. We're trying to share that much wider across government, because what we've learned, we think is really valuable to the whole of government. We think it's really valuable to UK citizens, and we want to share that as much as we possibly can, that knowledge and that skill, to enable other organisations to move into this space as we have and start reaping these benefits.
Cool. And the next question, can you talk more about the team structure and how did you organize the delivery team building the platform and the teams interacting with the data owners and internal customers?
So team structure, when we started out, quite a small team, where it was kind of multifunctional. As we started to scale and integrate into a platform, that becomes unmanageable. So what you then have to do is define specific functions. So we have UI teams, data lake team, infrastructure team, insights teams who develop specific models and rules and things like that. We have attribute validation teams who focus on data quality issues and things. So it's basically our teams have grown to meet the business functions that we need to deliver, and we've scaled that out in an attempt to be logical. So each of those teams owns the things they deliver, and they own, where appropriate, they own the pipelines and the infrastructure that delivers that data to them. And that, because of that, they then care about the outcomes and making sure that things work as they should, rather than throwing it over the wall to another team. So that whole structure is really important. That ownership thing is really important. So it's really about scaling to how your business works. I mean, my business is different from everyone else's business, but it's about how your business works and scaling to fit what your organization needs.
Okay, we've got a question from Paul. This kind of is referenced back to the presentation where the standard open format was mentioned. Paul's asking what does that mean?
Can I say that, Scott?
Yeah, so I think in that case we're talking about basically using like cloud-based object storage and storing it in the standard formats like JSON, Parquet, which let you treating that as your source of truth, and then leveraging that into like a wide set of tools and processing into other formats if you have to, and not being locked into like a particular tools format.
Great. Okay, so the next question we've got, Matt, have you made any optimizations that significantly reduce costs?
Continually. So we're always optimizing costs. So the data storage, unfortunately, just grows. That's dependent on the size of your customer base. But even then, you can optimize by using efficient storage and trying to manage your replication to the size that you need for your business to provide resilience. processing really, so streaming data in so it's available really quickly is important, but understanding how quickly your users need that data at any moment is really important from a cost modeling perspective. Providing some things to your users in fractions of a second is incredibly expensive, whereas 15 seconds might be tolerable and actually a lot cheaper. So it's about continually optimizing, continually updating. Think about processing, you know, the Moore's law, the cost of processing. Iterate your processing to meet your business requirement at that time. And having that flexibility to swap in and out of particular processing models within your platform, again, becomes really valuable because it gives you that flexibility to optimize to what you need right now, not necessarily what you think you'll need in a few years' time.
Great. Okay, so Nathan's asked, did CESG help in understanding the scale of issues you will face and current approaches and planned approaches being taken by other government organizations?
Yeah, so CESG, for those who don't know, is the UK Information Security group. They're now sort of wrapped up, a lot of that function is wrapped up into the National Cybersecurity Centre, NCSC, in the UK. Did they help? Oh, sorry, bit of background noise. Did they help? Yeah, absolutely. So we engaged with them right from the outset on this. We worked really closely with them to understand what was going on in the wider global environment. We worked with them really closely on development of patterns and standards, and again sharing those. So, you know, things like NCSC published good practice guides, GPG 53 for a thing called transaction monitoring. So we helped, you know, they helped us to shape that and model that, and deliver that out as a product, and they helped us. So that is their insights and their sort of canvassing of external organisations to understand how others approach this, how the collective approach this. Because you know what, HMRC aren't on an island here. You know, everyone's has these risks if you work an online business. It's just that a lot of organisations don't actually know they've got this risk because they're not looking at the data, they're not looking at their customer behaviour. So did CSG help us? Yeah, enormously, and they continue to, and we regularly engage with them as part of, thankfully now, much wider government and industry groups.
Cool. So I think we've got time probably for one more question. We've got about 5 minutes left. So we've got Joe here asking, how did you migrate from your previous data stores to the cloud? What were you using before?
So we were using physical storage in our own data centers. So I say our own, they were third-party data centers for our IT providers at the time. How did we migrate the data? Very slowly. It's the answer to that. It took a long time, and actually what we found out over time was initially it was about did we need to migrate data? So actually we found that our first tries at this, we didn't retain data for 7 years at that point. We retained it for about 2 years. So one of the things we realized was actually our user base at that time only really looked at about 6-8 weeks worth of data at most. So actually the data migration piece became less about did we need to migrate data, but more about could we collect a period of 8 or 9 weeks and then migrate users, not the data, and then start aging that data off and just then basically putting it back into archived storage and retaining it for the statutory periods. So that data migration became easier. Moving between cloud providers, that was a bit more involved, but thankfully a lot of the cloud providers now, if you do hit those challenges, have physical data transfer functions that can work alongside digital channels. So you can stream your data across, or in fact, you can physically move your data between providers. And sometimes that is more time and cost effective than streaming it. But a continuing challenge of how do you move data around?
Great. There are lots of still really good questions, but I'm conscious we're running out of time. So I think we're gonna say thank you to everybody. So thank you, Andy, for joining us, and Scott. It's been really, really interesting to hear about your journey. And thank you to everybody who's joined us from all over the world. I just want to say that our next Equal Experts or Experts talk is Wednesday, May 26th. This one's going to be really interesting. It's Principles, Practice, and Pitfalls of Creating a Data Pipeline. So this is with Simon Case, our data practice lead. So it's another really good talk. We'd love to have you join us for that. You can see the details there. So please do sign up and join us. And once again, thank you so much to everybody and to Andy and Scott. It was a fantastic talk.